It began on a cold June morning in 2015 when the guards at Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora, New York, conducted their routine 5:30 a.m. head count. The clang of keys echoed through the concrete hallways. Cell Block D was quiet, too quiet, when they reached cell 23, where Richard, Matt, and David Sweat were supposed to be sleeping. What they found sent shockwaves through the prison. Two perfectly arranged dummies, sculpted heads under the blankets, made from towels and flesh-colored fabric. The real men were gone. The alarm was immediate. Sirens blared through the compound. Guards sprinted down the corridors as searchlights swept across barbed wire fences and guard towers. But it was already too late. The two murderers had vanished from one of the most secure facilities in the United States. Richard Matt was a 48-year-old career criminal, charming, manipulative, and dangerously violent. His partner, David Sweat, was 35, quiet, calculating, serving life for killing a sheriff's deputy. They weren't friends in the traditional sense, but inside prison walls, alliances like theirs were forged in necessity, not trust. What authorities didn't know yet was that this escape had been months in the making. Behind the walls of Clinton, in the clatter of metal workshops and the hum of fluorescent lights, Matt and Sweat had found their way into the heart of the prison's routine. And at the center of it all was Joyce Mitchell. Joyce wasn't a guard. She was a middle-aged civilian employee who worked in the tailor shop, a place where inmates stitched uniforms and repaired prison clothing. To her co-workers, she was just another state employee doing her job. But to Matt and Sweat, she was the key to everything. Over months, the two men manipulated her with a dangerous blend of flattery and attention. Matt, the artist, drew portraits of her. Sweat, the quiet one, listened to her frustrations about her husband and her job. Slowly, she became their confidant, and eventually their accomplice. In the weeks leading up to the escape, strange things began to happen inside the tailor shop. Tools were missing. The sound of grinding metal echoed faintly at night. Joyce dismissed it as maintenance. In reality, Matt and Sweat had acquired power tools, smuggled in piece by piece, and had begun cutting through the prison's thick steel walls. When investigators later retraced their steps, the precision of the plan was staggering. They had cut through the back of their cells, crawled along narrow catwalks, and descended into a maze of pipes that ran beneath the prison. Using maps memorized from blueprints Joyce helped them access, they navigated through darkness, past humming water lines and rusted ducts, until they found an opening that led to a manhole just outside the prison walls. That night, when the guards believed all was calm, Richard, Matt, and David Sweat crawled out into the cold, damp air of freedom. They emerged from the manhole onto a quiet residential street, their prison blues replaced by civilian clothes smuggled through Joyce. By the time the alarm was raised, they were gone, disappearing into the forested mountains of the Adirondacks. As the sun rose over Dannemora, helicopters thundered above, K-9 units fanned out, and state troopers combed the woods. But there was no trace of them. Inside the prison, investigators discovered something even more disturbing. A note left behind in one of the cells. In red marker, it read, "Have a nice day." The state of New York was now on edge, the media in a frenzy, and a small-town seamstress was about to become the most wanted woman in America. But what investigators were about to uncover next, inside her home, her phone, and her mind, would expose a web of secrets darker than anyone imagined. The manhunt for Richard, Matt, and David Sweat had now entered its second day, and the state of New York was in full panic. Hundreds of law enforcement officers swarmed the small town of Dannemora. Helicopters roared overhead, and tactical teams scoured every inch of the Adirondack forest. Locals locked their doors for the first time in decades. Every inch of the Adirondack forest. Locals locked their doors for the first time in decades. Governor Andrew Cuomo visited the prison that morning, walking the same hidden tunnels escapees had crawled through. Even he couldn't believe what he saw. Cut steel, broken pipes, and a direct route out of what was supposed to be an impenetrable fortress. This was a movie plot, he muttered to reporters. Except it was real. But behind the headlines and helicopters, investigators were starting to piece together something far more personal. A story of manipulation, obsession, and betrayal. Their first clue came from the prison's tailor shop. Inside, they found Joyce Mitchell, pale, trembling, her hands shaking as she answered questions she had rehearsed 100 times in her mind. At first, she denied everything. "I didn't help them," she said softly. "They were just friendly." But detectives noticed the inconsistencies. Her changing stories, her nervous glances, the way she avoided eye contact whenever Richard Matt's name came up. Forensic teams soon discovered what Joyce had been trying to hide. Hidden among the fabric rolls were tools, a drill bit, hacksaw blades, and smuggled extension cords. It was clear now. This escape had been aided from the inside. As the pressure mounted, Joyce finally broke. Sitting across from investigators under harsh fluorescent lights, she whispered, "They said they loved me. I thought they'd take me with them." She confessed to sneaking in hacksaw blades, drill bits, and even food, all hidden inside frozen hamburger meat she brought from home. Her role was simple but crucial: deliver the tools, keep quiet, and wait for signal. The plan was for her to meet them after the breakout, drive them across the border into Canada, and start a new life. But when the moment came, Joyce panicked. Her husband was home that night, and fear outweighed fantasy. She never showed up. Instead, Richard Matt and David Sweat vanished into the darkness alone, carrying with them a grudge that would soon turn deadly. Meanwhile, across the Adirondacks, the forest had become their world. Thick pine trees, icy streams, and endless stretches of wilderness. For ordinary hikers, it was paradise. For two escaped convicts, it was both sanctuary and hell. They survived on scraps, drank from creeks, and slept in makeshift shelters. For days, police dogs came within a mile of their position, but the men kept moving, always one step ahead. But the cracks were starting to show. Richard Matt, older and slower, began to suffer. His feet were blistered, and he was drinking from contaminated water. David Sweat, the younger of the two, wanted to move faster, to head north toward Canada. The bond that kept him alive inside prison was unraveling in the wilderness. Back in Dannemora, Joyce Mitchell was officially arrested. Cameras flashed as she was let out in handcuffs. Her once quiet face now splashed across national headlines. To some, she was a victim, a lonely woman seduced by manipulation. To others, she was a traitor who had endangered an entire community. By the end of the second week, the escape had cost the state millions. Every false lead and every shadow in the woods sent officers scrambling. "We could be chasing ghosts," one trooper said. "They could already be gone." But then, a breakthrough. Deep in the woods near Malone, New York, a cabin owner reported finding an open can of food and cigarette butts. DNA confirmed it. The fugitives had been there just hours earlier. The hunt was back on. Officers moved in with night vision scopes and thermal drones, tightening the perimeter. The Adirondack night was cold and silent, the kind of silence that hums in your ears before something terrible happens. And that's exactly what was coming next. Because when the tactical team finally closed in on the fugitives, it wouldn't end with handcuffs. It would end with gunfire. The Adirondack wilderness had become a war zone. For 3 relentless weeks, hundreds of officers combed the woods with dogs, drones, and night vision. Helicopters circled overhead. Entire towns were on lockdown. But the fugitives, Richard Matt and David Sweat, seemed to dissolve into the forest like smoke. They were running out of time, food, and patience. Inside their crude shelters, made of stolen tarps and branches, the two men argued in whispers. Sweat wanted to keep moving north, close to the Canadian border. Freedom was less than 30 miles away, but Matt was slowing down, his legs swollen, his boots soaked. He'd begun drinking whiskey stolen from a hunting cabin, his paranoia growing with each passing hour. Whiskey stolen from a hunting cabin. His paranoia growing with each passing hour. Begun drinking whiskey stolen from a hunting cabin. His paranoia growing with each passing hour. Whiskey stolen from a hunting cabin. His paranoia growing with each passing hour. By then, law enforcement had tracked their trail through broken branches, discarded food cans, and cigarette butts. It was the break they needed. A perimeter was drawn. Over 22 square miles of dense forest near Malone, New York. Snipers, K-9 units, and tactical teams were brought in. Then came the radio call that changed everything. A Border Patrol agent spotted movement near 11 Mile Road, a remote logging trail cutting through the forest. A figure, older, limping, and armed, was moving toward a tree line. Officers moved in silently, rifles raised. Richard Matt never knew they were there. When he lifted a stolen shotgun toward the tree line, a single shot echoed through the forest. He dropped instantly. It was over. One fugitive down. But David Sweat was still out there, and more dangerous than ever. With his partner gone, Sweat moved quickly and quietly, staying hidden during the day and crawling through the woods at night. He was obsessed with reaching the Canadian border. He was within sight of it, just a few miles from safety, when a New York State trooper driving along a rural highway saw something strange. A figure darted across an open field in broad daylight. The trooper, Sergeant J. Cook, pulled over and approached cautiously. He shouted, "Stop right there." Sweat turned, his prison uniform torn, his face covered in dirt, and bolted for the trees. Cook chased on foot, calling for backup, but in that vast empty field, it was just him and the fugitive. When Sweat reached for his waistband, the trooper fired twice. The shot struck his torso, and he collapsed in the grass. He was alive, barely, and gassed as officers swarmed in, finally ending the 22-day nightmare. The manhunt had cost over $20 million and mobilized more than 1,500 officers. But the terror that gripped upstate New York was finally over. When David Sweat woke up in a hospital under heavy guard, his story spilled out in fragments. The escape, the tunnels, the betrayal, the plan that fell apart when Joyce Mitchell panicked. He spoke about the long nights hiding in the mountains and the moment he realized Matt was losing control. He wasn't the same, Sweat told investigators. He'd rather die than go back. As the truth unfolded, the entire Dannemora facility faced scrutiny. Guards were disciplined, procedures rewritten, and Joyce Mitchell was sentenced to 7 years in prison for her role. When asked in court why she did it, her voice trembled. "I thought they cared about me. I thought it was love." But for the people of Dannemora, love wasn't what haunted them. It was a memory of sirens echoing through their town for nearly a month. David Sweat now serves his life sentence in a different maximum security prison under constant surveillance. His cell walls are checked daily. There are no tailor shops, no civilian workers, no shadows left to hide in. Clinton Correctional Facility has since reinforced its tunnels with concrete and sensors, but the ghost of that escape still lingers, a reminder that even behind the thickest walls, human weakness can open a door. As one investigator said later, staring down the corridor where the escape began, they didn't just break out of prison. They broke through the illusion that anyone is truly untouchable. And for the people of New York, that illusion shattered the moment two killers crawled out of the darkness and into history.